So today we're continuing our series, our Chakra 2.0 series, and we're looking at the second chakra. And I highly recommend going and watching the first video at some point about the first chakra, and it will be uploaded on Insight Timer here too. But I'll still give a bit of a premise here, because we've often, we've studied chakras in the past. They've been almost introduced to us through the dysfunction that we've experienced. We look at the second chakra, for example, that we're going to look at today, and we say, yes, well, you know that your second chakra is blocked when you have issues with money, you have emotional struggles, you have struggles with relationships, like everything, and we have issues with our uterus or our testes or our urinary system. Like everything is based on the dysfunction of that chakra. And what's subtly dangerous about this is that we actually have the idea that there's something wrong with our chakra. Like we actually think that there's something internally wrong, in the same way that we might say that my liver has issues, that the liver itself, there's something wrong with it. We kind of do the same thing to the chakras, and we say, well, my second chakra is, damaged, or it's not working properly, or something like that. And there's something weird about internalizing that, because it makes us feel like, a leg has been cut off and there's nothing we can do about it now. The leg is cut off and I'll always have to work around it or something. So instead, imagine the chakras are divine energy whirling portals. There's nothing wrong with our chakras. They're energy. They're part of our energy blueprint. I'm not even 100% sure that your second chakra is any different than my second chakra. They could be exactly the same energy, right? Fueling this incarnation or fueling your incarnation. And how it looks kind of in my DNA blueprint is one thing, but imagine that there's actually nothing wrong with it. It's pure energy. So I found this really interesting woman, and her name's Cindy Dale, and she teaches about chakras, and she's very, very interesting. She currently teaches, and I just got this one idea from her. The rest of her thoughts are fascinating and interesting, but this one idea she had about that there are two concurrent worlds running. There's a world of light and a world of shadow. And the world of light is the world that the ancients speak of, that the wise ones speak of. And even inside of us, we know it exists. It's almost like this utopia. And even the idea of utopia makes us immediately go, yeah, as if that's going to be real ever. There's an instant, yeah, whatever, right? But we can smell it. We can taste it. Like, I'm sure that even the fact that we're here, that this very select group of people that are here, know that this light world exists and is possible, because that's where we're walking towards. We know it. If we believe that the world was meant to be completely dysfunctional and all of our struggles and everything were just completely normal, and the sea will always be stormy and we'll always feel like we're drowning, we wouldn't be learning how to meditate. We wouldn't be gathering here. We can all feel this world of light, this world of wisdom. It's almost like when we meditate and those answers come, they come in that place, because in that place, everything is living in harmony with each other. Like we really are living in symbiosis. We really are living in this thing that we can feel inside of us. The chakras exist in that world. Our chakras, they exist in that world of light. So if you imagine inside of you right now, you are these beautiful weaving, you're this beautiful weaving of all of these different aspects of the divine. And all of these aspects are the things that we're bringing to this world. They're the things we need to be humans on this planet and to have the human experience that we desire. So they're perfect, right? So here we come into this space-time continuum, this 3D world, perhaps, or maybe that's all we can perceive at times. And we come into this world as these amazing energetic beings. We talk about this all the time. I'm an energetic being having a human experience, right? But the world itself, the world is the other world. It's the shadow world. Because no matter how optimistic we want to be, it's a really difficult world out there. You know, there's sunsets and puppies and mountains and lovemaking and chocolate and great things too. I'm not getting rid of all the joyous things in life. But there's some real darkness out there. There's real cruelty. There's meanness. There's disconnect. There's disconnect from nature, disconnect from each other, disconnect from God. There's just real cruelty out there. And this is the shadow world. So now you imagine you have this pure energy, this pure light. And it's like, oh, look at this. It's almost like imagining you go to a world that's really cold. So what do? Well, you put on clothing. You put on winter coats. You put on gloves. You put on boots. You put on hats. You cover your face. You know, you just adapt to the environment. So that's what we've done. We've come to this earth and we've had to adapt to the environment. We've had to adapt to this shadow world. But in the same way that who we are inside all those winter coats doesn't change, it's the same with our chakras. They don't change. But we do create an interface in between this and the world around us. And what's really interesting is as we've gone through our life, we have taken off coats and put them back on and created this and grabbed a sword and done whatever we needed to do to survive this world. But they're all in the interface. You know, it's again like back to the whole winter coat analogy. If your winter coat gets tattered and torn, it's just your coat. It's not you. It's just the coat, right? So that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at the chakras in the light and then looking at the interface that maybe we can clean up now. Maybe we had to adopt certain mannerisms and tools and protection mechanisms and all these kind of things to survive a certain time of our life, a certain ancestral pattern, a certain cultural norm, whatever. But we needed this at that time to survive it. But do we still need it? You know, are we still wearing the winter coat, but it's actually warm out? And now we're suffering because we have this winter coat and we're sweating to death, but all we have to do is take off the winter coat, you know? And that's really what we're looking at. We're looking at this interface. What can we look at? And what's so wonderful about this is it's not so personal. Because one of the greatest challenges on our path, you know, when we talk about doing the work, right? When we talk about whatever it is we have to look at, if we think it's us that's broken, we take it so personally, all of us. Like there's really something fundamentally wrong with me. And then we have shame, and then we feel like a loser, and then we feel like I'm never going to figure this out. And then it's like we just get depressed, and this is still us. Like this emotional self that I'm talking about is still me, and I still have to function through that. It's not separate from me. That is my reality. So then what happens? You know, when you start feeling like that, you just kind of, if you imagine yourself walking along the road and you're walking along and you're doing the work, you know, whatever the work is you're doing, and you're doing the work, and all of a sudden a thought comes in, you're like, you're never going to figure it out anyway. Because you've always been like this. And everyone in your family's always been like this. And no one gets you. And you're just going to always be an outsider. And no one's ever going to. And you just slowly you start walking and you start hunching. And you walk slower and slower and slower until you go and you end up sitting on the side of the road. just giving up. And that's what it feels like when we think, and that's why I mean, I mentioned the difference between saying my second chakra is blocked and I have an interface with the world outside that doesn't allow me to express my true light. It's a very different feeling, right? To be able to heal this thing that I created for very, very good reason, especially in the second chakra. So what's the second chakra all about? So the first chakra, we have become manifest on the planet, right? It's the ground. It's literally, we are made of stardust and of earth, and therefore be humble and know your greatness idea. So the first chakra, here we are. We have arrived, we're on earth, and we can see the trees and we can enjoy food and we can do all these things. This is amazing. The second chakra allows us to look around and see each other. It's like, oh, how you doing? Look, there's other people here. Hey, look, there's a mountain. Like we start to actually interact with the world around us. This is like almost the beginning of duality, especially with people. Like, well, we're going to talk specifically about people. But this is where we actually start interacting with each other. You see this with children. Up until about the age 6 or 7, they kind of play by themselves. They're kind of in their first chakra. It's like, oh, look, sand, right? And even if they're all in the sandbox, they're just co-playing. They're not really playing with each other. They're not interacting. They're just playing in their own sandbox. And there happen to be other kids around them. Then around the age 6, 7, they start to realize, hey, there's other people here. I want to go play with Bobby, or I'm kind of looking at that girl over there, or whatever, right? It's sort of this, hey, there's another person here. This is the joy of the second chakra. This is the energy of actually interacting with others. And this can be joyful, right? This is amazing. I mean, you can already feel like there's like, yeah, but, right? There's this, the shadow world is coming in and saying, oh, but they're not all nice, and kids are cruel, and you never know, and and there's all this thing. So that's the shadow world. But in the purest sense, the second chakra simply says, wow, look at us all here, like right now. Look at us all here, interacting with each other. This is the second chakra. If we all stayed in the first chakra, we'd all just be enjoying our own lives by ourselves, doing our thing, interacting with nature, doing whatever we're doing. But instead, we're choosing second chakra energy and saying, hey, how's it going? What are you doing? So what happens then? Imagine in perfection. Imagine what this is in perfection. So I come up to you and I go, hey, how are you doing? Like, what's your name? And you say, oh, I'm so-and-so. I'm like, oh, I'm Katrina. And it's like, oh, have you ever done this? Yeah, I've done that. That's really cool. Hey, do you know where the local coffee shop is? Yeah, I do. Hey, do you want to go there? Sure. And suddenly I'm having this interaction with another human. And what's happening here? It's flowing. I'm saying something, they're saying something, we're doing this, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, isn't this amazing? This is so much fun. And the energy is moving back and forth between the people in beautiful flow, right? This is very different energy than first chakra. Hey, look at us hanging out on the earth. But it's just me. It's just me and the earth. And now I'm in second chakra and I'm flowing with other people. So what happens there? We have new experiences, right? We start to actually experience other people's realities. And someone says, I love to paint. And you're like, really? Like, how do you do that? Or what do you do? Or can I see them? So then I go and I see their paintings, or they teach me how to paint. And I have an experience. But I only had the experience because I interacted with another person, right? This is the joy of getting to interact with other people. And then I say, I'm really into Richard Feynman right now, and I love reading his books and hearing about his physics, and it's so interesting. And they say, oh, have you ever heard of this guy? Has he ever? Really? That's fascinating. And this is this incredible flow in the second chakra, right? Just pure flow. And then maybe sometimes I meet someone and I don't particularly like being around them. Maybe they're interested in things that I'm not interested in, and like I'm not really good at talking about sports. And if I meet another person and they're like, oh my gosh, did you see the hockey game last night? It was so cool. And then in the second thing, they did I don't even know how to say it. The second period, they did this and this and this and this and this. And I'm kind of bored. And I can actually feel the magnetism, because realize magnetism is now playing in the second chakra, because we are magnetic beings. We are electrical circuits that run on magnetism. So how we interact with other people runs on magnetism. And when we're attracted, we play. And when we're not attracted, we're supposed to leave. We're supposed to honor this magnetism. It's our design, right? So some guy, they're talking about hockey and this and that and this and that, and I'm standing there and I'm feeling no attraction anymore. So my body and mind is actually kind of doing this, in perfection, that magnetism would simply disappear and he'd realize that he was actually always talking to himself anyway. Because he sure wasn't talking to me, right? And the other interesting thing about that is this magnetism is what helps us respond. So let's say that person, it wasn't just that they were talking about hockey. Maybe they were really upset about something, and maybe they even lashed out at me. And I was upset. And I got this like horrible feeling inside, like, oh, this is horrible. I hate being around this person. And I just left, right? That's a response. That's a response to another person. So that's an emotion, right? When I'm around you, oh my God, I feel so happy inside. I feel so light. I feel so excited. I feel so excited to be alive. I love it. This is amazing. And I listen to that emotion as the excellent biofeedback mechanism that it's designed for. And I go, awesome. I want to spend more time with you. I'm enjoying this second chakra interaction. It feeds my soul. It just feels fantastic. Right? But then maybe you're around someone and it makes you sad. And you go, sad. I don't really want to feel sad, so I don't want to hang out with you. Right? So here's where the problem comes. Right? We can already imagine what the problem in the shadowland is with all of this joyful interaction with others. So on the one hand, we have all of these weird constructs in society that tell us how we're supposed to act around people. Regardless of the magnetism, regardless of our emotions, regardless of whether we want to be there, regardless of whether it's on our soul's path, here is how you have to act. So what we're actually doing, society itself, by creating these structures, is they're telling us you aren't allowed to listen to the flow of the second chakra. It could be as simple as school. You have to sit there. But I'm not interested in this. Yes, but you have to sit there. But that guy was mean to me at recess. Yes, that's okay. You're just going to sit there. There's this weird training that says whatever it is you're feeling inside is irrelevant. And now say even in school, you're interacting with a teacher and they are teaching you something or they're showing you something. And here's what you have to do. And you're supposed to be interacting with them. Like you're supposed to be having a second chakra experience with this person. But it's empty. Or it's mean, or it's controlled. And you're not actually a human. You're kind of just an object to be manipulated or to be formed or to be whatever. So what happens there? Like what happens to us when we get stuck in this structure? It could be in the family. Like how often in family, you're not allowed to do this. We were taught to be polite. right? And there's a lot of politeness, which is really beautiful and creates really lovely flow. Like true politeness can cause wonderful flow, right? It's like, they used to talk about if if you had company over, because, the original politeness was you must, for example, like social, maybe it's not politeness, proper rules or whatever. Like if you were to drink wine from a wine glass, you must hold the stem. And there's logical reasons for this, that you don't warm the fluid, right? But you hold it in the stem. But if you had company over and they picked up their wine glass and held the goblet part, they held the this part of it. The polite thing is for you also then to hold it the way your guest does, because it makes them feel comfortable. That actually allows flow, right? Nobody's above anyone. No one knows better. No one's of some different class than another person that has different rules and all this nonsense. It's just flow. It allows for easy flow. So there's a lot of the politeness training actually has very, very beautiful intention, but a lot of it doesn't. A lot of it says, you're going to act like this whether you want to or not. You're going to be nice to your Uncle Charlie, whether he's mean to you or whether he feels you up in the hallway or no matter what he does. This is what you're going to act like. So we create all of these weird programs inside of us, not only to kind of keep people at a distance, right? Because it's not safe and I can't listen to my own feelings around you, but also to protect ourselves. Because in a pure flow state, in a pure second chakra state, we're listening to the clues. We have so many navigational tools built into that second chakra. Like when you really think about the perfection of the second chakra, why was it given to us? To help us interact with other people, right? To help us guide us interacting with 7.5 billion people. We were given magnetism. Oh, right? We were given emotional response. We were given desire. We were given all these things to navigate. So much in the shadow world says, yeah, you're not allowed to use any of those. You're not allowed to leave. You're not allowed to go after the things you want. You're not allowed to listen. You have to quiet your emotions. You have to bury how you feel, right? So this is really important when we look at and we say, well, I think my second chakra is blocked, right? Or I think maybe the interface that is surrounding me is not allowing my second chakra to flow. To really understand that it's not you. To really know that it's a kooky world. That's the funniest thing about doing these series for me, is that I feel like I'm just like totally bashing the world all the time. But it's just the reality. And then what's really interesting too is, so I'm 52. So for the first large portion of my life, I didn't have choices to leave, to honor my magnetism, to listen to my emotions. I was under the control of other people, parents, schools, whoever. Then I got married, and then I felt again another control from the expectations of being married or the in-laws or the family or the church or whatever. And then you start to realize, wait a minute, this doesn't even make any sense. Like, I'm not supposed to be some robot that just follows the rules. But in all of those years, I had to create this way of surviving. Almost like a way of surviving so that inside I could still feel like me. But to you, I'm going to show you this persona. I'm going to act a certain way to maybe keep you at a bit of a distance. I'm going to be sarcastic. I'm going to be a little bit mean. I'm going to be a little bit aloof. I'm going to be whatever. I'm going to be a little louder. I'm going to be a little quiet. That's what you're going to see, because I'm going to keep the real me in here. And that's this interesting thing. But as we go on in life, I now have the freedom to honor my magnetism. I now know that my emotions are powerful feedback mechanisms. And my emotions, my feelings will tell me the truth. Not only will they tell me the truth, they'll guide me on my journey. But in this stage of my life, I know this now. And I have the autonomy to honor that. So then the shadow world can still be the shadow world. It can be still the exact same place that I was raised in. But because I'm stronger and I'm more connected and I understand magnetism and emotional response and all these things, I can clean up my interface. I can be honest and I can tell you the truth and I can walk away or I can walk towards and I can respond honestly and completely clean that interface. You know, it's sort of that, the journey of Tantra. One of the big pieces of it is completely releasing all the structures of society. And what that does is not only allows you to connect spiritually, but it allows us to actually access our natural gifts. And this, of course, in this case, is our second chakra, natural response to others. It's like I always imagine, one of the things I love about Google Maps is when you follow Google Maps to help navigate, right? It'll actually avoid traffic. You know, so when I live downtown Toronto, I use Google Maps all the time, even if I didn't know, even if I was going someplace I'd gone many times before. Because Google Maps would tell me if there was an accident or if there was a slowdown, and it would reroute me. And I thought this was brilliant. Imagine if everybody used this and everybody was constantly kind of being rerouted around each other, you know, unbeknownst to them. And then everything flowed so much better. Imagine it's the same thing. What if all of us are always listening and we're honoring the magnetism? Like I really felt this when I was dating, you know, and you would meet someone and there was either magnetism or there wasn't. Like we can go into, you know, whether they're attractive and that, all this stuff, right? Which is mostly all in our head anyway. But actual magnetism, you either feel drawn towards or you don't. It's not personal. It's just magnetism. And it doesn't even necessarily mean that that person is characteristically repulsive or characteristically attractive. It's just these two beings. And the only question is, are we on each other's paths? Yes or no? If we are, there will be a mutual attraction. And if there isn't, there won't be. It's not interesting. It's just magnetism. And, you know, so there's a huge joy in being able to just honor that all the time and really understand. Because one of the hard things is that gets in the way of this, that gets also programmed into this interface with other people, is even all the movies, songs, media that we ingest all the time. You know, for me, one of the most damaging things in my interface was growing up as a teenager in the 80s. And a million movies about nerds, Revenge of the Nerds. Every single movie was some, you know, interaction between the cool kids and the geeks, or the outsiders and the dorks, or whatever. It was this massive thing. And that went deep into my psyche, you know, and I was so convinced I was a nerd. I was so convinced I was a loser. I would never be popular. And then it keeps going. It says, no one's going to like you. So imagine your second chakra. And all you want to do is interact with others, but no one's going to like you, Katrina. Because you're one of those nerds. You're one of those dorks. You don't look like those other people. And if I would look like that person, if I had big boobs and I wasn't covered in acne and all that kind of thing, then maybe boys would like me too. And you know, it's all programmed in our brain, has nothing to do with reality. And it sure has nothing to do with our divine second chakra. So then, of course, we spend a lot of time unpacking that and saying, that's not true. A lot of things in the shadow world do look like that. It's the same thing. If you don't go to the gym, if you don't look a certain way, if you aren't fit, if you don't have a certain body type, if you don't look a certain way, people aren't going to like you. And we have all of this second chakra stuff. And the second chakra is just saying, yeah, but we came to Earth to hang out with people. Like, we were actually designed as social creatures. Why are we creating all these blocks? Why are we saying that some people have more? Like, it doesn't even make any sense. Like, when you really go there, you can't even make sentences out of it, right? The other weird thing, there was a movie called The Day They Invented Lying, or something like that, or When Lying Was Invented. Being taught to lie to people is it's also a strange aspect of the shadow world. So all of a sudden you're interacting with someone and you're not allowed to be honest. You're not allowed to respond according to your magnetism. You're not allowed to respond according to your emotional response. We must respond in the way society's told us to. We must respond based on what that other person wants us to say. We become hyper concerned about the other person, again, because this shadow world is full of meanness and cruelty and difficulty and everything else. So maybe we need to lie to the other person so we don't get hurt. We need to lie to the other person so that they don't kick us out of the group. We need to lie to the other person because maybe they too have been really hurt and we don't want to hurt them anymore. So we keep just saying whatever. Well, how can we possibly interact with anyone? We're not actually interacting with anyone. We're just pretending. It's like we're just writing scripts and throwing the scripts at each other. So it's a fascinating thing. And it's almost a real edgy thing to begin to interact honestly. Like, so how do we do it? Like, how do we just simply live from this beautiful second chakra? How do we allow flow? And it all just comes down to this truth. That it's just simply what it is. Do I want to hang out with you? Do I feel called to be here? Yes or no? And when everybody understands that, nobody's walking away. Because even I say taking it personally, there's nothing to take personally. Like, it's not like that. And yet we have all this programming that says, oh, it must be because I have a big bum, or it must be because I don't have enough muscles, or it must be because I don't look like Brad Pitt or something. And it's not. It's all not true. So one of the big things that we often look at in the second chakra is emotional health. And again, we look at the dysfunction, right? We look at where the emotions get stuck. But again, the number one thing, all emotions are good. If I interact with you, like even say grief, if you and I are together and I lose you for some reason, maybe you move away, maybe you pass away, maybe we just simply aren't together anymore. There's going to be real grief inside of me. I'm going to naturally feel a grief at the loss of this beautiful interaction. And that's it. I just feel grief. There's no analysis, there's no sadness, there's no this always happens, there's no why me, why them, why did we ever meet, how come? That's all something else. That's not even, that kind of chatter doesn't belong in any of the chakras. Like, that is 100% just from the shadow world. There's no reason to ever go into any of that, right? The other challenge is when we don't use these emotional responses to do something with them, that's when we get stuck. Like if people were to say, if we go back to the whole idea that, my second chakra is blocked, or I'm stuck, or I can't feel that energy of the second chakra, let's say. One of the number one things is we aren't listening to the emotions, and then we're not using that information to make change, or to take action, or to actually respond. So if something makes me angry, I need to do something about it. If someone has breached a boundary, then I need to do something about it. I need to make a different change, not that other person. I need to make a different change. But again, we have so much deep training that says you are not allowed to respond in this and this and this way. So for example, even in relationships, in the land of marriage, up until within my lifetime, divorce wasn't allowed. It's still not allowed in many countries, or it's not economically feasible in many countries because still there's not an equality in working and autonomy between the sexes, right? But so all of a sudden, the church says you can't leave. Economically, you can't leave. So now you're stuck. So then all of a sudden what happens? Your emotions are irrelevant, right? A biofeedback mechanism is meant to have change. That's the point, right? If inside of our body, we have our skin says it's cold out here, and it sends a message, which is like a feeling or an emotion, but it sends a message to the brain and says it's cold out here. We need to shake to get warm. So we shiver. This is the point. The shivering is the point of the biofeedback mechanism to make us this. Or if it's hot, the message is sent and says, okay, we need to open up the sweat glands and sweat so that the body cools down. The only point of having the feeling is to make change so that the body comes back into homeostasis. So it's the same thing. Every emotion we feel in the second chakra is there to help us take a step, to take action. Always. Which is why every emotion is so important and so powerful. And as soon as we actually start responding, what happens? We get back into that flow, right? I feel this, so I make this change. I feel this, so I make this change. And suddenly we're flowing again. And suddenly I'm not afraid of interacting with you because I know that however we interact, I'm going to respond and you're going to respond and we're going to flow, right? This is why I love my friends, because everybody's always honest. There's no rules. There's no constructs. There's no need to lie. There's no need to put up barriers. Everything just flows all the time. We just flow. And it's easy. And you don't have to always agree. And you don't have to have the same opinion about everything. But you can always flow. And you can say, wow, I'm really upset about this. What do you think? And it's like, wow, you're really upset. Oh, that's interesting. What about this? What about this? And you can just keep playing. It's like you just keep playing tennis, right? You just keep playing and you just keep the whole thing flowing. And this changes everything. It's kind of the same with, we often think of the second chakra and creativity. How does that work? So you kind of have this idea, but now you have to interact in the world to make it happen. So you have to go out there and you have to try something, and maybe it works and maybe it doesn't. And then there's this and then there's that. It's like yesterday I was in a Zoom call with this woman who was a midwife, and we were talking about the gestation period and all the metaphors for birth, whether we ever have children or not, doesn't matter. But the metaphors for birth. And I started kind of giggling to myself when you think of, let's say you have a project, or let's say you have something you really want to do. If you actually imagined the journey to manifesting that project was like the 9-month period of pregnancy, imagine like the first 3 months of morning sickness, right? So you have all these ideas and all these things going back and forth, but not all of it works. So you end up kind of feeling tired and you feel sick and maybe you throw up and you have all these issues. But all we're doing is interacting with this new idea. And we're interacting with the world and we're trying to figure things out and we're doing this thing, but we're interacting. It's actually part of the creative process. And sometimes it doesn't feel good. And sometimes you have to kind of work around and sometimes you have to, but we have to get through the first 3 months, right? And then once you get through the first 3 months, then the work starts and things start to be created and all these interesting things. And then right before like the last trimester, right, you just feel like it's like this big and you just don't know. And what if it's not going to work, right? It is a fascinating idea. And it's the same with this second chakra. All we have to do is keep flowing with it. Whether we're in a period of kind of that morning sickness time of, I don't know, and and this didn't work out, and I thought this was right, and what if it's not, and all these kind of things. And then there's this time of really chewing it up, and then the birthing of it. Well, you can imagine the requirement of the flow of the second chakra. It's the same thing. But the beautiful thing about listening to that second chakra is just trusting the flow. Just trusting it all the time. Like in the same way in the first chakra, we trust our connection to the earth. We trust the abundance of the world. We trust that there will be food and shelter. We trust that. And then we enjoy it. Imagine we actually trusted the flow in the second chakra. We trusted that, you know what? I'm meant to be here to interact with people. So how do I do this in a flow state? Okay, maybe I need to be a little bit more honest. Okay, I'm having an emotional response. What am I going to do with that? Oh, what am I going to do with this weird magnetism I feel? How come I suddenly want to leave the room? Like, I remember one time I was at a retreat. It was a dowsing retreat, learning how to dowse with pendulums and rods and all that kind of thing, a long time ago, maybe like 18 years ago. And we're all sitting around there, and I was really new to all that kind of energy, just that whole dynamic. I'd never been, so I was all kind of naive in many ways. Like I would just sort of flow with whatever they were doing, but I wasn't really checking in with me. And if I didn't know what they were doing, I just assumed, well, I just was ignorant. I just didn't know, so I should just listen more. But so we're sitting in this huge circle, like maybe 30 people in this, cabin in the woods, and we're learning about something. And I think what happened is we had to do this thing where we had to like move energy around the circle, and like one hand is up and one hand is, I guess the left hand is up and the right hand is down, and you do this energy transfer through the circle. And I saw this woman get up and leave the circle. And she just went and she stood way at the back watching. And I'm staring at her like, that's interesting. Because of course, I'm also deep in my people-pleasing phase at this time, right? So I'm not going to do anything that breaks team. But anyway, and I did the exercise, whatever it was. And then I went over to her after, because I was so intrigued, and I said, so how come you left the circle? She said, I don't know. I just felt this energy pushing me out of the circle. And I'd never heard anyone say that before. And that's that interesting magnetism that just goes, and she trusted it completely. And then it turned out that she lived 10 minutes from me. And like this retreat was way off, like 3-4 hours away. And it turns out she like was practically a neighbor, and we became friends. But so it's a fascinating thing to just simply trust it, that says, no matter what I'm doing, whether I'm creating something, whether I'm interacting with other people, no matter what I'm doing, the flow state is the natural state. That's where all the energy is. That's where all the power is. So if I come to a place where I can't flow, then I need to look at that. And that's all. That's it. Like, it's just in this interface with the shadow world. There's something that's not allowing flow. Let's look at that so flow happens. And and then it's just so much easier, right? And honestly, for me, I think it always just comes down to truth, just to whatever that truth is, whether it's an emotional truth, whether it's magnetic truth, whether it's spiritual truth, whether it's your soul's path, whatever. I use that all the time. And I say it like I use it, but I don't use it. But it's like the number of times something doesn't feel right. And someone will ask, well, then, but why won't you do that? Or why don't you want it? And I'm like, I don't know. It must just not be on my path. And that's sort of, if I have a pat answer for someone who doesn't really get it, who doesn't really honor that emotional truth, satya, magnetism in their own life, that's kind of my final answer. Because otherwise I feel no flow and I just can't do anything. Oh, sorry, I'm just going back. I feel empty and sad frequently for some reason and don't know why. Feel depressed and can't seem to pass that. Everybody has a different reason that we get feeling empty and sad sometimes. And I'm sure that there are extenuating circumstances around your question. Carolyn Mace used to write about dark nights of the soul. And she would often say that sometimes we have a dark night of the soul because we've asked for guidance. And we got an answer, but we didn't like it. So, or for whatever reason, we don't feel like we can take that action or do that thing. So it's like we wait for a second option. But there is no second option. There's only the first option. Like there's only truth. Right? There's not two realities. There's not two journeys. There's just our journey. So sometimes we feel sad and empty because we got our answer. But for some reason we don't feel like we can do it. So we're just totally stuck. The other thing that I've experienced is if I'm feeling empty and sad, it's like I have to remember all the other things I love doing and just doing them, adding them back, going out for coffee with someone, taking a painting class, volunteering at a dog shelter and doing cuddling dogs and walking them. Like there really is an action step needed that takes us out there again. Because we all get stuck in places all the time. But it really is it's a question in prayer, right? So for me, it's always I sit and I ask, what is the step? Not why, nothing like that. Just what can I do? What's my next step? What's the next step on my path? And then when the answer comes, I just have to have the faith to do it. Fear keeps us away from flow so much. And it's funny how much fear has also been programmed into us. And a lot of the fear was real, again, because the societal construct said, you can't escape, right? You can't leave. You can't get away. And so fear is a huge deal. But again, even fear is supposed to be situational, right? It's supposed to be, there might be something that comes up, and fear is a very valuable emotion, right? Have you ever had that where you go somewhere and suddenly you're gripped with fear? Well, this is important. This is that fear is what causes the deer to run. Right? This is really, really important. to just whatever, like if there's a real fear, then we need to do something about it. But then we have to look at the fears that are just simply programmed into the shadow world to control us, right? Because that's a thing. They're nonsense. And when you really look at them, you realize there's nothing there. There's no substance to it. It's that saying, how many times, like, for example, and this is a weird example, but because of course it's about being naked. But, I remember the first time I ever went to a nude beach in Jamaica. It was on my bucket list. I totally wanted to do it. And the fears inside of me, all programmed from the shadow world, right? Children aren't afraid of being naked. Every single fear I had about being naked was all just programmed into my brain, right? Just some weird software that got programmed in there. But I was going to do it no matter what. And I stood on that beach and I sat down on my chair and I took off my sarong and I laid down on the chaise lounge. And I watched people walk around, talking, having drinks, eating burgers, going for a swim. And I realized it was all nonsense. And there's this saying about so many fears. You think there's a tiger blocking the door. You think there's a tiger stopping you from doing the thing you want to do. And then when you finally say, I don't care, I'm going to do it anyway, and you summon that courage, and you walk up and you realize the tiger was made of paper. It was never real. And I don't know what percentage I would want to make up at this point about what percentage of the fears inside of us are paper tigers. But it's a huge, huge number. This whole week I've been fighting guilt about not wanting to be around my mother, who always upsets and hurts me. Right? Because we're taught that we must be with them, right? We must hang out with them. It's my mother, after all. She birthed me. But these are all just intellectual things forcing you to stay in a situation. Like if you actually feel the second chakra, like if you actually tune in with that second chakra, it's telling you something very clearly. And so here's the other piece. Like this is the other thing that's really important. So thank you for saying that. When we listen to the flow of the chakras, what are we listening to? These are divine energy centers, right? What if the guidance from the second chakra is our divine guidance? So if we feel the need to be apart from someone for any reason, imagine that to be divine guidance. That as much as the societal structures say one thing, which we know where those go, they're not functional, they don't work. The proof is in the pudding on that one, right? But what if that second chakra energy that says we need to be apart for a while is divine guidance? And then we have to just close our eyes and trust it, because we always think of divine guidance as only coming up here. But every single chakra is divine. And if our second chakra is guiding us in the interactions with other people, and we feel a need to separate ourselves from someone for a time, there may be a time where there's a shift in the wind and a reconnection happens. What if we trust that that's right, even though society says it's not? What if that's the leap of faith? To really, really, really honor it. And really think about this too, because the second, so, we talk about the feminine, We talk about the wisdom of the feminine, the divine feminine, and how important it is in this time. And this is in all people, all genders, just people, all of us incarnate souls on the planet. What does our divine feminine tell us? Right? It guides us on our path. Right? So if we're feeling guided to come towards people, then that's where we're meant to go. And if we're feeling called to move away, then that's where we're meant to go. Think of how messed up the feminine is in society, in all people, and its relation to emotions and emotional health. You know, think of a woman's menstrual cycle as she cycles through this emotional, chemical, monthly shift. If we were designed and we knew that honoring those emotions brought us great wisdom, how different those cycles would be. You know, so in a woman's cycle, for example, there's 2 homeopathic remedies for that premenstrual time, right? One is pulsatilla, the desire to just go into a corner and cry. Wow, I've lost the other one. I've lost the name of the other one. But the other one basically is where you want to grab an Uzi machine gun and kill everybody. Or at least shoot them. Maybe you don't want to kill them, but you want to, But these are the 2 sort of extreme emotional responses. But that's in all of us when we don't listen. Because we're not listening to sepia. Thank you. We're not listening to our divine wisdom, to our divine feminine. That's what we're not listening to. Every one of us. So if you imagine our reproductive health, our urinary health, our creativity, all these things, our interactions with other people, all we have to do is honor that truth and even just know that there's great wisdom there. At work, there are times when total control is all around and I feel this tightening in my body and just want to leave and escape. Yeah, and you never know. And again, sometimes if you're in a position in life that for whatever reason you can't really just leave right now, sometimes all you need to know is, I feel a lot of inner tightening when I'm at work. Something's not right here. Like we just have to listen and honor it and then say, you know what? I need to start considering my options. I'm getting a message. I need to start considering my options. Today may not be that day, but I am listening. I heard it, right? When do we speak up or choose not to say anything and let it go? I feel like it's so dependent on the situation, right? You're interacting with another being. So there's another being in this equation, right? It's not just you. There's another being. So would speaking up help the flow? Would just letting it go and walking away help the flow? Right? What is it? What is it that would allow truth? What is it that would allow the honoring of each person? But it's always just important because it might be a different answer depending on who you're interacting with. There's like the people in my life, the best thing is always to speak up because they'll flow with me. It'll help. There's other people that the only thing that works is actually walking away and creating a boundary or a wall. And then they have to kind of bang against the wall for a bit, realize that you really mean it. Then you have a chance of them coming around and saying, okay, no, really, can we talk about this? It just depends on what the answer is, right? How do we honor ourselves and the other too without being selfish? So this is where, to me, it's this divine guidance question, right? That one of the things about emotional health in the second chakra is being very clear. What are my emotions? What are their emotions? What's my path? What's their path? Like, if we're going to interact with other people, we have to remember that they're different people, right? They are their own incarnate beings. And each person has different desires, and each person has different intentions, and each person may be playing out different dramas and issues and hopes and dreams and all these things. We can't be responsible for what the other person wants or wishes or whatever, right? So it's the same thing as if one person has a habit of lashing out at people and they don't see anything wrong with it. They think it's fine to be sarcastic. They think it's fine to be mean. They think it's fine to be like that. And you don't like being around that. You're allowed to find a new way to interact with this person, whether it's at a distance or whether it's over the phone or whether it's less often or whatever. That's your soul's path. We're not responsible for that person's soul's path, no matter how we're connected through society. We're just souls, right? So it's not about, I don't actually know. It's an interesting question because we use those words a lot. Like, what does it mean to honor the other person? So if I'm going to go against my truth to allow someone else to have a reality that I don't see, I once had a friend who believed truly that he should be allowed to treat anyone any way he wants, and they should stick around. He even said once that the friendship should be bomb-proof. He said to me, I thought our friendship was bomb-proof. I said, why do you keep setting off bombs around me? It's like, that's not why I have friends. Like, I don't have friends who set off bombs that might hurt me. He'd say, no, but you need to be okay with it, or else you're not a good friend, right? But he doesn't have to be wrong, and I don't have to be right. He just simply wants he wants to be able to do whatever he wants all the time, and everyone has to stay. I don't want to. And that's it. Our souls desire something different in friendship. That's it. It's not interesting. So for me to remain friends with him, or for me to remain hanging out with him, is me accepting a reality that isn't mine. Like that's all. And so we really, really have to look at this. We have to really look at, what is this? Like, I remember even when I ended my marriage, that's what I finally actually came to. I realized that this man simply wanted something very different out of marriage than I did. I mean, we had 20 years together, but we had very different desires. And that was it, which I think is why in the end we're still really good friends. Because he wasn't wrong. I wasn't right. And so it's really, really interesting to allow each other to be unique people, and that no one has to live in someone else's reality. Yeah, it's a great question. It's a big question. So thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful day. We'll see you soon.